life's challenges have a way of signaling the need for change and growth. So when that time comes, you retreat, rebuild, and resurface stronger than before. Something I'm sure that we can all relate to as human beings. And if you're lucky, you share this process with the ones that you love the most, be they on stage or off.
Welcome back to Foos Files, the podcast for fans of the Foo Fighters. It's Dan here, hope you're all doing well. It's been an interesting week, hasn't it? We've all been waiting and waiting and waiting to see how the band were going to mark the 30th anniversary. And we had all the nostalgia stuff, the archive images, the Substack content, and then finally last Wednesday, bang, they hit us with a new song, today's song. So I'm going to spend this week's episode focusing on that. It'd be remiss of me not to do so because it's the first new Foo Fighters release since I've been doing this podcast. So, as those who listen regularly will know, I like to put a bit of context and chronology into these things before we get into dissecting the song itself. And while today's song dropped last Wednesday, it was 24 hours earlier that the activity really started when they surprised us with a cover of Minor Threat's I Don't Want to Hear It, which was a lot of fun. And the interesting thing about that was that, according to the information that was put out there, is that this was largely recorded during Dave's debut album sessions with Barrett Jones 30 years ago, and then the vocals completed this year, 2025. So, which in some ways, that's a perfect way to bookend the 30th anniversary, but it did cause a few grumbles in terms of people saying, are they just dialing it in with this 30th anniversary stuff now? And then the following day, the cat was out of the bag early when the LA Times published their article about the Foo Fighters releasing today's song, and it had quotes from Dave, which we later got in full in a statement and an audio recording. Fast forward a few hours, the song finally drops, along with the aforementioned statement from Dave, both written and in audio form too. It's fair to say the song has split opinion somewhat among the Foos fanbase, certainly from those that I've interacted with, which of course is fine because music is subjective, and just because we're fans of a particular band, it doesn't mean we have to absolutely love everything. So anyway, for this episode, I've canvassed a few opinions on it, which I'll get onto shortly. Before that, let's cover off what we know about today's song. Well, not a great deal, other than there's a production credit for Oliver Roman, who's the engineer at Studio 606 and worked on But Here We Are, and the DG stuff as well. There aren't any other credits in terms of who played on the track, so we can only assume that it is Dave on the drums. That's certainly what's been reported in several media outlets. Then the only other noteworthy and striking detail that is worth mentioning, of course, is that Harper Grohl, Dave's daughter, designed the cover art with a painting of a white bird as its centrepiece. So what about the song itself? Well, from a lyrical point of view, it screams introspection, reflection, going through changes. You've got lines like screaming for a change and don't let this cruel world compare you. As I alluded to, musically, it does seem to have divided opinion a bit. From my point of view, when it dropped last Wednesday, I was just about to get in my car and a few people in a group that I'm in were pinging the links around. So when I got in the car to start my journey, I actually listened to Dave's statement, which was around 13 minutes long. I listened to that first, and he talked through this whole journey of meeting Nate at a dinner party and the road to starting the band. And there's a recurring analogy of keeping it on the road for 30 years, and then the fable of the lobster and the rabbi, which is the metaphor he was using for growth in adversity and vulnerability. It also contained some really nice words of recognition for all the past Foo Fighters band members, William Goldsmith, Franz Stahl, Josh Freese, followed by a really heartfelt, loving bit about Taylor Hawkins too. So hearing all of that first of all and then playing the song, it provided a bit of context and the song kind of made sense off the back of that. I think if I was listening to the song first and perhaps they'd come back with this as a first drop from a new album, I might have thought, this is a bit underwhelming. They're hardly coming back with a typical Foo Fighters bang. But as a point of reflection to mark the 30 years, it just kind of works for me and it makes sense and it's contextualised nicely by what Dave says in his statement. The key part of that statement that really puts the song into context for me is where he says, over the years we've had moments of unbridled joy and moments of devastating heartbreak, moments of beautiful victory and moments of painful defeat. We've mended broken bones and broken hearts, but we followed this road together, with each other, for each other, no matter what, because in life you just can't go it alone. The musical structure of the song, that's really grown on me too. It's got that tender, almost Beatles-esque start for me, and then after 50 seconds or so we get that juicy hook, and the drums just come crashing in, and it's But Here We Are-esque Foo Fighters. And yeah, it's your typical grower. The guitar hook and the chorus become pretty infectious the more you listen. Whether it's one we ever get to hear live, who knows? That'd be quite interesting, hopefully in the shows later in the year. In the interest of balance and impartiality, there is one thing that I don't love about it. It's a well-told story that Dave has a complex about the way his voice sounds on recordings, so he has a habit of multi-tracking his vocals, which is something actually that he has in common with John Lennon, who was said to not have had a lot of confidence in his own voice. And there are songs like Dear Prudence on the Beatles' White Album, and then John's solo track Instant Karma. They're two that spring to mind where double tracking is quite evident, and the Foo Fighters have done that a lot too. And on today's song, yeah, I think it's a bit overdone on Dave's vocal and a little bit over-processed for my liking. So that'd be my one negative about the song. So that's my verdict. I'm going to now read out a few takes from the Foo community on what they feel about the song, starting with our friend Kiri from Foo Fighters Live, who's written a brilliant piece which again contextualises the whole release and the background to it really well. A key excerpt from Kiri's piece is where she talks about Dave riding the emotional tide carried by thunderous drum work and complemented by Rami's delicate flourishes on the keys. Dave's second oldest daughter, Harper, painted the cover art, depicting a bird, possibly an albino crow or raven, and invoking a sense of grief and spiritual growth. Change is difficult and growth is painful, yet in typical Foo Fighters fashion, hope and endurance are also present. I'd highly recommend you go over to foofighterslive.com to read Kiri's piece in full. And then there's a few messages I had in. A really good one was from another friend of the show, Cheryl Feynman in Florida. She says, there is no other artist for me that cracks themselves open through their music as poignantly as Dave Grohl. Today's song is reflective, contemplative, mournful and cathartic, reminiscent of Deepest Blues and February Stars with a direct nod to I Am a River. The message is heard. Life ain't easy, but we walk this road together because we just can't do it alone. Music heals, the artist and the listener, which I thought was a really nice way of summing it up lyrically. Kim Hearn, who some of you will know from previous episodes of the podcast, says, it's become an earworm. To me, it's got concrete and gold vibes with a sprinkle of But Here We Are. It reminds me of another song which I just can't place right now. I can imagine singing it in a stadium with the old lighters, aka phone torches, going. Live, they could probably make it so much bigger and heavier. The lyrics have a message which I could read a couple of ways, depending on which lens you read them through. Marla Rivera says, I love it. From the very first note, I just knew I would. It resonates with me on different levels from past experiences, present thoughts and future hopes. Not every new release is going to be an Everlong or a Big Me right away, but I do think given time, today's song will be right up there with them. Josephine Pittock Sierra says, it's on repeat in my head. Sometimes it takes a minute to find the groove with new songs, but not this one. Lee Myers-Wiseman, I absolutely love it. It had me from the very first line. I woke today screaming for a change. As with any song, it can have a different meaning for each person who listens. To me, this is an anthem of hope for myself and my personal struggles, but also for the world at large. Now I just want to see them play it live. And then we do have a few that fall into the underwhelmed category, shall we say. Scott Lester says, for me it's just okay. I'm a die-hard FF fan. I've listened a few times since the release and I still feel the same way. I don't hate it of course, but I don't love it either. When Rescued came out, I was pretty pumped. This one leaves me hoping that what comes next surpasses it. The production leaves something to be desired. Everything feels pushed into almost distortion. So while I love anything new from the FF, this one didn't totally do it for me. Glenn Schwartz. It's meh, like most first singles the Foo Fighters released lately. The first single off the album is usually the worst. I'm hoping the trend continues because I'm not really a fan of today's song, but I'm really looking forward to the album. But that's just my opinion. Fingers crossed there is an album, Glenn, but that remains to be seen. But let's hope so. Jason Sprague. It reminds me of Wheels. Yep, that's a comparison a few people have made actually. Jim Freeman, who plays in the Foo Fighters GB tribute band, said, it sounds very much like But Here We Are, but I hear some joy or hope in the chorus. Macarena Chocan says, I like it. It has bits of the Concrete and Gold sound, and But Here We Are as well. And then a final couple over on Facebook. Tom Grant. It took me a few listens to understand it, but once I did, it felt incredibly moving. I personally love how Rami opens the song. Every record that comes out, he seems to have more influence on it, and I'm all for that. And finally, Lucas Avela. I didn't see anyone mentioning it, but it sounds very Beatlesque, like something Paul McCartney would put out, and that's great in my opinion. Let's see what the near future brings for the Foos. So that's plenty of reaction from the Foo community, largely positive, but a few who are a bit underwhelmed. Nevertheless, any Foo Fighters release day is a good day in my book. Oh, and the only other thing to mention about this particular release is that there has been a limited run of 7-inch pressings of today's song in a plain white sleeve that a number of fans seem to have been receiving. And at the time of recording, nobody had really got to the bottom of this or figured out the rationale behind who got one and who didn't. So, if you are one of the lucky people to receive one of those vinyls, then please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. So that's it for this week. I appreciate there's been a lot of me talking again and not much else, but rest assured next week we'll put out a proper interview episode to give you all a break from my voice. Thanks again for listening to Foos Files. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could drop us a review and a 5-star rating on your favourite listening app. Have a great week and see you next time.